1080. I wanted to make sure that it defaults to 720. So I wanted to make sure that it was the crispest that we could get here.
I hate when my like YouTube will like
down res or something like that.
Yeah, it'll like be on auto, and then I'm watching it in 240 or whatever, and I'm what's going on?
I think you need to upgrade your internet.
yeah, that's probably part of it. It's probably part. It's better now. We're at my parents' house right now. We just moved in. What was that? 2 weeks ago. We're gonna live there until the baby's born and get our own place, whether it be our house like we really want or an apartment, which I will settle for because we need our own space starting a family. Love my mom. Love my mom, but living there with a baby might be a lot.
Living there without a baby probably is a lot.
It is. It's much harder for my girlfriend, and
I believe it.
It'd be vice versa if we were living at her parents, but my parents are pretty chill. They're pretty laid back. We hang out outside. We eat outside. Got a pretty cool setup. There's a nice garden there. We've got chickens. It's a nice abode. I love it there. We were thinking about like trying to build up to be able to purchase that house because my parents are retiring next year and they don't need to be paying Zionsville property taxes any longer.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to go a little bit of a different route. We were talking about it last night. It's been a conversation we've been needing to have, but talking about like where is best for us to buy financially now and for the future, kind of mixing the two together. And based on my experience and the numbers, it seems like Broad Ripple is probably the best spot for us to get our first house because the appreciation there's outpacing everywhere else in Indianapolis.
Broad Ripple's awesome.
It is. We did the math last night, and I mean, there's not a ton of houses in Broad Ripple at like the 250 price range, but there are a couple of small bungalows around there. I'd like to get into one of those, and Broad Ripple has average appreciation of above 6%, but I based calculations off of 4% because the R word's been circulating lately, and you never know. So you want to be conservative. If we lived there, my game plan is buy the house either this winter or early next year, and we're there for 5 years until our kid needs to go to school because we want him to go to Zionsville.
Yeah, then you get the heck out of Indianapolis.
Yep. Nothing wrong with living there now. We don't have a kid in school. She works up in Zionsville, so it's a bit of a commute, and it's a bit of a commute for me up here as well. But to be able to get and capitalize on that Broad Ripple appreciation for 5 years, we think we'd get.
And that's not even that bad a drive, man.
No, it's not. And I do a lot of work in Broad Ripple too. If I could only sell homes in one neighborhood in Indianapolis, it'd be Broad Ripple. Yeah, for sure. But luckily enough, I'm not siloed to only Broad Ripple. It's a really cool spot though. But we said we're kind of calculated, estimated if we're making our payments and making an extra payment that we'd have about $70K in equity after those 5 years to be able to go get in a new house and start a college fund or whatever we want for little man. We haven't picked a name yet.
So that's awesome.
Calling him Little Man.
I like it.
Oh.
That's awesome, man.
I
like the plan.
That's our cold open for today.
Oh, wow. Okay. Hey, we get the personal update from the host.
Yeah. It's been a while since I filmed, so I'm gonna get back to doing it regularly, and grateful for you guys offering the space.
Yeah.
It's gonna be awesome. But anyway, welcome to the Pulse Neighbors. I am Julius Clark, your local Indianapolis realtor. We've got Nick with Off Leash Construction and Investments here today in his space. Beautiful logo back behind here.
To be clear, I offered the space for your logo, but it's not quite ready yet. We'll get there.
Yeah, that's another life update. We'll get there in the next. It'll be set up in the next 2 weeks, but when I publish it, I'm not quite sure. I want to make sure it's perfect. You know? But I'll get a website branded and out there. I need to get back to my newsletter. That's a pretty important thing that I've been nagging to get back to. But I don't want to rush it. I don't want to start it and then change it again once I've got my domain up and running. But been trying to educate myself quite a bit on SEO and how to operate a website lately. So I think we're going to be in an all right spot.
Hey, I like to hear it, man.
Yeah. What's new with Off Leash?
Oh boy, man, it's been a minute since we chatted. It's got to be at least 6 months or so. Off-leash investments has been relatively quiet. I've been buying occasionally here where it makes sense, but not a ton. And we can talk a little bit about why that is and some of the market trends that exist there. Off-leash construction, on the other hand, has been taking up so much of my time and is honestly probably the reason why off-leash investments isn't doing nearly as much. So from a construction perspective, we are absolutely growing like a weed, which we feel so incredibly blessed that we are in that position. We actually ended up hiring one of the hotter names in the investor contracting world to come work with us as a project manager. He's a contractor himself, so he's helping us from that perspective. We've in-housed a lot of our maintenance and our plumbing, and we're working to do a lot more. So we just we're growing like a weed, having to develop process as we go, and making a lot of mistakes along the way, but making them right, and just trying to treat our customers like we would treat our family.
Yeah, there's lessons. They're not mistakes.
Yeah, sure.
Just don't make too many in a row.
yeah, absolutely. Don't make the same lesson twice.
Yeah. Where do you think has been like the most critical opportunity for you guys' growth?
So honestly, the way I think about our business is kind of a three-legged stool. And I would say all of them have their own benefit and their own advantages that we're seeing today. The first and foremost that we're known for is the investment world. So many investors out there know our name and trust us to be their contractor when working on their out-of-state or in-state projects. And so that absolutely is kind of our pillar that we live on. One that's been growing for us quite a bit recently is the retail customer, the customer who buys their first home and wants to make an addition or do whatever they need to the home in order for it to be their dream. That's been something that's been growing quite a bit for us: new kitchens, new bathrooms, finishing basements, stuff like that. That's just a lot of fun and getting to do stuff for actual homeowners. And that's been growing very quickly for us, and we've been really grateful to see that. The third leg of that stool that's doing really well is actually the maintenance side. We had a property manager approach us about 6 months ago now, maybe a little bit more, and he came to us and asked, as we were talking about our construction, he's like, "Well, do you guys do maintenance?" And Paul and I, being the idiots that we are, we just said, "Oh yeah, we definitely do maintenance." And then we had to figure out how to do maintenance. And thankfully, that's been a hugely growing piece of our business. We've in-housed our maintenance, like I was saying, where we actually have W-2 employees who just work for us and not subcontractors. And so we're working with a variety of different PMs around Indianapolis for about 2,000 doors now. So no, we're not the exclusive on that 2,000 doors, but let me tell you, we get a lot of work orders. So it's been quite the little adventure. So hard to really differentiate the three and determine which is the most important, but they're all growing for us, thankfully.
Sweet. Kind of secondary question there. Could you speak to like the importance and why in-housing is a good idea for a growing business?
Yeah. You always, when you're a subcontractor or contractor, you have a delicate line that you are balancing because technically when they're a subcontractor for you or a contractor for you, you can't tell them where to be and when to be there. You lack a lot of control when you're doing that. There are advantages from a tax perspective and why you'd want to do that. But when you W-2 somebody, when you actually pull them in-house and they are your employee instead of a third-party contractor, you can tell them where to be. You can tell them what shirt they need to wear. You can tell them, hey, like you got to show up and say these words, essentially. And huge advantages there. The other advantage is you tend to save a lot on a per hour basis. So, where we might have paid out $40 an hour previously, now we're paying out a consistent $25. Now, you're paying out $25 whether or not they're on a job or not. So you better, it's your job in that situation to fill their calendar. But you're generally, if you can fill that calendar, saving a decent amount of money.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, I'm sure you don't have a problem right now keeping the calendar book.
No, it was funny. Actually, before you got here, one of our handymen, he swung by the office and he was looking for me because he's like, "Hey, I finished up that job, a little bit early. and his next job wasn't for like another 2 hours. We filled that 2 hours.
Yeah.
We found a place for him to go and spend that such that is revenue generating. Now, I don't want people to hear, oh my God, you need to in-house as fast as you can, because then you're responsible for somebody.
Yeah.
They really aren't working with anybody else. You are responsible for feeding their family. So you better deliver.
Yeah.
You better be able to fill that calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good notes. I think I've always seen in-housing as like the ideal situation in most cases. I remember learning in like business school when to outsource and when not to, but I don't know. It's cool to have people in your circle that you can immediately have available for the tasks that you need. But you're right, there are the risks associated with it as well.
Total, tons of risks associated with it. But then the other advantage is when your water heater goes out on a Thursday night, you can call that guy and be like, "Hey, I need you to get out here with a water heater immediately." I'm speaking from firsthand experience. I won so many points with my wife when that happened the other day. So it was pretty great.
That's pretty fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Going on the tangent of water heaters, I've been seeing more tankless water heaters lately. What's your opinion on those?
I have wildly mixed opinions. As the person who now can charge to install them, we charge a lot more for them because there is more work associated with it. So I like it from that perspective. You can, with a recirculator, get much of the same value that you would get from a tankless water heater with a tanked one, and save a lot of money and have a whole lot less maintenance in the grand scheme of things. So I would generally advise against it in most situations, especially if you're up here in Hamilton County, where the water is basically a rock. It's the hardest water you could possibly imagine. I'm assuming Zionsville's similar.
Yeah.
I would probably advise against it and just replace that water heater every 6 to 12 years or whatever, versus going tankless. But I'm willing to be talked off that opinion. But like as the businessman, I'd love for everybody to go get a tankless water heater. It'd be great.
Yeah, I was curious. I've been walking through houses lately and I've been like, "Where's the water heater?" And then go around the corner. It's that thing on the wall.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. Like I thought about it in our house when it went out, but just from a maintenance perspective, I'm generally an advocate of the tanked.
I'd seen it like primarily before. I don't know like why recently I've been seeing them more, but like in smaller units where there's just not really space for a water heater, or you could have it better used for something else.
Yeah.
Not taking up.
And it seems so much more modern.
Yeah, it does seem so.
So the way I've heard it described that I liked was that it's like an electric car. Electric cars are great today, but there are sacrifices that are associated with them from a maintenance perspective and from a like how do you go the distance kind of thing. And so it's an awesome technology that in a couple years I think is going to get even better.
Oh,
yeah,
that's good perspective.
Yeah.
I like electric cars.
Oh, me too. I drive one, but let me tell you, when you're driving more than a couple hundred miles, it's a little bit of a pain in the butt.
Yeah. They don't have the battery tech there to be able to store a whole bunch of them in your car yet.
Yeah.
So.
Or just recharge it faster.
Yeah, that's another one. I mean, take some calls while you're sitting at the recharge, take a nap maybe.
Yeah.
It's hot out here right now to take naps though. Oh well.
Yeah.
So I drive Tacoma, and I hate the gas mileage, but I remember how much I love it every time a family member or even for work, like I need something to move.
Oh yeah.
I'm so happy that I have a truck.
Yeah.
I've moved fridges, water heaters, couches, beds, everything. And it is the most phenomenal vehicle to have while camping.
Oh yeah.
I love it so much. We were just down in Red River Gorge the other week and I was able to do so many fun things in my truck that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'll tell you I'm definitely tempted by the Ford Lightning for that very reason.
Yeah. My friend got the Maverick, the smaller one, I think. It's interesting. Yeah. It's a small little truck, but anyway, we've gone off on tangents. One of the things we want to talk about today was what are the value add items that you typically deal with investor clients or even retail clients that are wanting to spruce up their home?
Yeah. And I think it comes down to the retail clients are a little bit different than the investor clients. Retail clients are generally looking for, hey, I want to live in this home for a long time. They're not necessarily thinking about resale value for the most part, which is a fun place to be, because let me tell you, they spend a lot more in those situations. And you know what? We get to flex a little bit more. We get to have a little bit more fun, which is always a blast. Investor clients, on the other hand, are looking to get kind of bang for your buck in those situations. And I know we've talked historically, the best place to get bang for your buck from a contractor's perspective is specifically in the kitchens and bathrooms. If you can add an extra bathroom, if you can take it from 1 bathroom to 1.5 or 2 bathrooms, my God, the comps that you're going to see are completely different. I'm sure you can attest to it. It's, it might cost you $5,000. It might cost you $10,000-$12,000 to add that half to a full bathroom. But generally speaking, in most neighborhoods, I know you were talking a little bit about Broad Ripple. I bet you the difference in a 3.1 versus a 3.2 is got to be at least $20,000-$25,000. Let me know if you disagree with that.
No, I totally agree. I think it's like the quality of life that kind of impact, and you're seeing that in like the sales price. If you have 2 bathrooms, your quality of life is much better than if you have 1 bathroom, and you're going to pay for it. And you're willing to pay for it because your guests or your kid or whoever's over at your house no longer has to use your bathroom.
Well, that's a piece of it. I know my wife and I hadn't lived in a 1 bathroom for a long time. Then we moved here to Indy back in 2020, and we were temporarily. We knew it was always a temporary home for us. We were living in a 3.1, and I multiple times nearly had an accident because my wife was doing her hair or whatever. And so thankfully we had 3 acres in the back that was able to be claimed. But I think we would have lived in that home a lot longer if it was for the if we had that second bathroom. So from a high level, generally speaking, you're going to get outsized value if you can find that extra half bathroom or extra full bathroom. Generally speaking, you want to look kind of at the square footage of the house. Hey, if it's 1,000 square feet, 3.1, you're probably not getting that extra half bath. But if you've got 1,200 or 1,400 feet, you got a good opportunity there to sneak one in there. If you're in a 2.1 that's 1,000 square feet, you probably got a chance to get that 1.5. So you kind of have to look at that as your opportunity. Kitchens sell houses, as you're well aware. So upgrading a lot of that builder grade or just really old stuff to a modern kitchen, generally speaking, is going to have outsized value for a lot of people. And then there are the visual things that are relatively inexpensive. They're still expensive, to be clear. Material and labor costs are where they are, but flooring and paint are surprisingly some of the quickest and easiest ways to spruce up a house and really make it feel a lot nicer. So many investors over the years have put like vinyl sheets down and stuff, or just have used bad contractors who have just laid flooring on top of existing flooring. And so one of the best things you can do just from a feel of the house perspective is make sure to just tear up the existing flooring and put down fresh flooring on the subfloor, and the house will just feel more stable. I know you're an agent. You've probably walked in a bunch of houses where it's just hilly throughout the entire house.
You can tell there's 3-4 different layers of flooring under.
Just, when you do that, you walk in there and you just start to question what other corners were cut throughout this entire house. And so, what you're looking for in that scenario is to kind of show that whoever's walking through, hey, like we actually did the demo and did it, and then put fresh paint on the walls. It's inexpensive. Just do it. It's one of those things that if your walls are marked up, people lived in there, you're probably best off just getting those things painted.
Didn't you have the hard question of what color should my flooring and walls be?
Agreeable gray, right? Isn't that the thing? No, don't go too crazy is generally my recommendation. You can have some fun with it. You can get different type of wood grains. I'd get away from some of the grayish that's existed here recently. That's every investment house in Indianapolis has the exact same kind of grayish walls, grayish flooring. And maybe get some wood coloring. I think that seems to be coming back a little bit, specifically in the flooring. And then on the walls, you can kind of do some eggshell kind of thing. That tends to be what's working right now for people. Yeah.
As long as it all matches, it needs a flow. If you're trying to like sell your house, I'm helping my uncle right now, and they've got an elderly mother that lives with them with a wheelchair, so the floors are terrible. They're getting new ones. And it's like, well, what floors or what colors should they be? Because so much of their house is already gray and they're currently gray. And it's, where do we move to? I think they're doing a tan.
Yeah.
I got a call with them right after this. We'll see.
Nice.
We'll see. I have a question. This is a unique scenario, I guess, and maybe not every situation is like this. And I'm not even really sure what the answer is. My neighborhood that I currently live in, there was a house that recently sold for so much more than every other house in the neighborhood because they added on, like, I want to say they added close to 1,000 square feet off of the back of the house.
Whoa.
But that probably cost them more than they got in their return. Would you imagine?
I would almost guarantee.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much of a difference you're talking about, but generally speaking, new construction on the low end is sitting at about $150 a square foot. And then I happen to know you live in a nicer area, so I doubt that they were at $150 a square foot. I'm betting they were probably closer to 200, 220 a square foot. And given the finishes and everything that you're probably talking about. So yeah, I don't know what the gap was there, but
it wasn't even that crazy. I imagined that it would probably cost them a lot more to do, but I think it was a lifestyle thing for them that ended up helping them when selling.
Let's take a moment there because what you're talking about is something that I think is really interesting, and that is additional square footage. I think a lot of houses have additional square footage that you need to be aware of that you might not necessarily think of. I think everybody who's looked at investment properties in Indianapolis has seen the upstairs bedrooms with the slanted ceilings. It's because somebody popped that top. They essentially went up there and they turned that into, in a lot of cases, a bedroom. Now, you do have to have, and I wish Paul was here, he could give me the exact dimensions, but you have to have essentially
7 feet of clearance.
Yeah, 7 feet of clearance to count that as livable square footage. So that's something to be cognizant of. Basements are another opportunity. Now, a lot of the older basements that a lot of people see here, the wet basements, the really bad ones, those aren't necessarily going to make a lot of sense, essentially because most of them are actually pretty short too, and would feel a little bit like a prison. But some of the homes built after the 50s have an opportunity to convert some of those basements into additional living square footage. What you're going to have to do in those situations is you're going to have to dig out an egress window to make it not feel like a dungeon, and to potentially count those as bedrooms as well down there. That's a huge opportunity there to convert. The last one that I'll just say that I thought was really interesting, we're doing it for a client right now, and I'm so excited about it. It's up here in Noblesville, actually. And we discovered that, we kind of did that pop top thing I was talking about earlier, but we're actually able to raise the roof, and we're basically found an extra, I think, 900 to 1,000 square feet in that house. And let me tell you, she's not paying $150 to 220 a square foot.
Yeah, it's probably not cheap to raise your roof, literally.
No. And it took a long time. Permitting was a disaster.
Yeah.
But we're getting through it here.
How do you check that the foundation is going to be able to hold that additional weight?
Oh, you know what? That's where we call in the foundation experts to take a look and make sure. Thankfully, this is one of those situations that we didn't have to raise it too much, so we're not talking about too much additional weight. But that's where you pull in the experts in those situations.
I remember there was a flip I was looking at. We didn't end up offering on it or anything, but you could tell it had been recently renovated, but you couldn't really. It was gutted. Somebody had left a project, but I went and looked at like the street view, and I recommend this to any realtor that deals with investment properties, because street view oftentimes is going to give you the ability to look further back in time at the home. And this house was like a little tiny bungalow, and then they just like built a whole house, a 2,000 square foot house around it, using primarily the same foundation. Right? There's no way that this foundation is going to be able to hold up. So just something to kind of consider if you are dealing with those types of properties. Might be a little spooky on the inspection.
Yeah. But that is one of the best things you can do if you are looking at it from an investment perspective, is to find that extra square footage wherever possible. Now, maybe not where you're building around an existing house, but within the confines of the existing home is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I would imagine that finishing out a basement's probably less expensive than adding additional square footage outside.
Oh yes, not even in the same ballpark. I mean, it's not cheap by any means, but it's going to be a whole lot cheaper. And generally speaking, where the opportunity is to see actually a little bit of a return there.
Yeah. All right. So I talked about the items that you can get return on when renovating or remodeling your home. what are those less sexy items that people need to pay particular attention to that maybe aren't impacting the value of their home, but are putting the home in proper condition?
Yeah. So these are the kinds of things that make it hard to sell a home. And so thus will detract from the value of your home because there are fewer people who are willing to deal with these issues if you don't deal with it. First and foremost is knob and tube wiring. If you have a house built before 1960, you probably, and it hasn't been recently redone, you probably have knob and tube wiring. It's not inherently unsafe, but if that thing breaks, you do have quite a bit of a fire hazard. And in a lot of cases, insurance companies aren't willing to insure the home.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that's not sexy. It's going to cost you high 4, low 5 digits to correct it. But it's one of those things that you have to get done in those situations if you want to have a chance at selling it. And if you want to rest your head easy at night that your family was living in that home. So that's always the first one. Second one, I would say, is just all the mechanicals. It's like the furnace, the water heater that we were talking about earlier, the AC, all those things. They're not sexy. They don't add to the value of the home. It's an expectation that they work. And so they're the kinds of things that you just want to make sure are in good working order. And then the big one that very few people are aware of, but is a huge issue, are the lines coming to and from your home. It's like your water line coming to your house. Just making sure that that's in good working order. I've had a house recently that it was not, and I had to replace it, and that was a high 4-digit problem. The other one, though, is the main line. That's the line going from your house to the sewer system. I have a client right now that, oh my God, everything has gone wrong with this particular one. I feel so bad for this guy. We did a gutter extension for him and had removed his existing gutters because they weren't working. And what we found out is that the gutters had been connected into the sewer line, which is illegal, not something that you're able to do. So there was a backup issue when all the rain came in and filled up the line. So that was bad. What made it worse is that then we went, we plugged it for him and figured that whole thing out. Found out that it's collapsed at the 40-foot mark before it hit the city. And so that's going to be a mid, like a probably $15,000 type of repair just to get the waste away from the home. And so again, it's one of those things you don't think about. You assume, hey, the utility company covers it, and they do after your property line.
Yeah.
Once it's on your property line, you own it. And so I highly, highly recommend spending the couple $100 whenever you are seriously evaluating a home or getting that inspection to get that main line. Never skip that one. It's one of those things that it's not sexy, but you need to make sure that gets done in order to protect yourself.
Yeah, and I don't know the odds of it, but a lot of the times, a simple flush, a jet flush, might cure the issue. I've the couple of sewer inspections that I've been a part of, most of them have had some type of blockage,
root intrusion.
Yeah, and the jet has been able to.
Yeah, well, and that's a really good call out. You're going to see root intrusion on a lot of these older homes. Totally normal. Maybe even slight offsets. Totally normal, given the age of a lot of these homes. Where you have issues is when there are blockages. So yeah, I highly recommend getting a jet. And if you know there's root intrusion, getting one maybe every 2 or 3 years, just to make sure that thing stays clear and you don't have to deal with it, and that the roots don't take hold and actually collapse the thing.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like the clay plumbing that's like is probably older.
Oh yeah,
it needs an extra eye. All right. What's the material that they've started to use after that?
It's mostly plastics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Not too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I do know that there's definitely cast iron out there as well, which is becoming a little bit of a problematic.
Yeah, over time, of course, that's gonna rust.
Yeah.
What's the biggest issue with like clay? It's just too malleable.
It's not that it's too malleable. It in a lot of cases it lasted 60 or 100 years.
Yeah.
It's old. It's old. This is an old city, and that's why there's so much opportunity for people out there from a renovation perspective. But yeah, it's an old city, and so a lot of the infrastructure is old. I know that a lot of water lines are actually being replaced by the city, by the utility companies right now, because in some cases there's a lot of lead in there, and so like most of the northeast side of India is having their water lines replaced right now, just simply because of that. Yeah, it's just old infrastructure.
I mean, not good, but good that they're fixing it, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's a lot that Indy's got going for it right now. There's a lot of renovation happening, lots of buildings being built, and a lot of companies moving here. I'm excited for that side of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I do. I reach out to people on Instagram every day from high school or college, or people I've just met along the way, and so many of them have moved out of Indianapolis since. And I always enjoy having the opportunity to share with them how Indianapolis has changed and how cool I think it is. I used to be somebody that hated Indiana. I wanted to leave here so bad, and then I don't know, towards the end of college, that mindset started to shift, but I still wanted to experience time away from Indiana. And then as soon as I did, I wanted to come back.
Yeah.
Like it's home. Everything that you need is here. We've got good culture, we've got good food, and Hoosiers ain't so bad.
No, definitely not. I'm a huge advocate of people moving out here. As somebody who midlife decided to relocate and become a Hoosier.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. Like, what reasons brought you to Indianapolis?
Yeah, so I'd been investing out here for a while, and then COVID hit, which sent my wife and me home to work remote for at least a year. And so we just moved out here on a whim, saying, "Hey, let's get closer to the real estate business. Let's do that for a little while." 6 months. I remember my wife was actually the one who suggested it, but somehow I became the enemy in this. Because I jumped on it real quick when she said that. And I remember as we're driving into the city, she looks at me, and we've got our 2 golden retrievers in the back of the car. We're driving in here 6 months and not a day longer. Then she started seeing what life could be like out here, and what we could afford. And yeah, so we haven't left.
Well, let's back up then. Why did you start investing in Indianapolis?
Yeah. Rent to value ratios were fundamentally the issue. I'd gotten addicted to receiving rent. My first house was in Laguna Hills, California. It was a house hack. We lived in a neighborhood we wouldn't have been able to afford to without the house hack. Our first house, I think we bought $650,000. It was crazy, stupid expensive, but it was in a nice area. It was run down. It had rats and bats and bad roof, and everything was wrong with this place. But we ended up buying it, and then I got that first rent check. I'm like, yes, 1,000 times yes. But I couldn't go and buy another $650,000 house. I kicked my butt. And so began investing, and there were a lot of influencers that were talking about Indianapolis. And so ended up buying a turnkey as my first one out here, and it went terribly. I had an eviction immediately. It was bad. But I saw the potential. I think that first house I bought for like $75,000, and it rented out for like $750 in that ballpark. It was like a 1% deal. That was back in 2017 when those existed. And yeah, so I just got addicted to it.
I think you hit on 2 things we can go on here. One is the 1% rule, and the other is turnkey investing.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to speak on first?
Yeah, let's talk about turnkey. For anybody who's not sure what that means, turnkeys are kind of the same thing as like a rent-ready house. But fundamentally, it has been done by an investor, usually tied to a property manager on the back end. So what that means is, for instance, a company that exists out there, they found this ugly house, they fixed it up, they handed it off to the property manager, got a tenant in place, and then sold it as a finalized investment with the tenant in place, like income already producing. Rent ready is a little bit different, where, hey, it might have been already fixed up, but there's just not a property manager already tied to that project.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just
that's
a
good distinction.
Different.
I've never even thought about the distinction there.
And everybody has a slightly different definition of turnkey. That is mine. Is that it's already like income producing when you purchase it, like no work required.
Sounds like a good distinction.
Yeah,
I like that. I'll hold to that.
Yeah, all right. Hey, at least I was able to make the distinction today.
Yeah. So, what would you say some of the pros and cons of turnkey investing is or are? Turnkey
is I always talk about a continuum when you're investing. There's return on investment, which is cash flow appreciation, loan pay down, tax benefits, and inflation hedging. Those are like the 5 ways you make money in real estate, all divided by the amount you invested into that property. So, if somebody's looking to maximize ROI, you need to either increase the wealth drivers on the top end or reduce how much you have invested by, doing a low down payment loan, by going in and doing the BRRRR strategy, which we can talk about as well, or value add and then pulling your capital back out. That's ROI. ROTI is the other end of the continuum that I talk about, which is return on your time invested. And the way I calculate that is that it's that ROI that we have on this side divided by the number of hours that you invest into that property. So it's a continuum. Now, turnkey, not a very good ROI for the most part, because you got to put that 20, 25% down to make that happen. You'll do well, but it's going to have a pretty big denominator there of that 20 to 25% of the purchase price of the home. That said, it's pretty easy. You just got to go get that loan and you're done.
Yep.
And so the ROTI is pretty darn high versus the BRRRR strategy, which for anybody who's not familiar, that stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. That's where you go in there, you find an ugly house, you buy it for $50,000, you invest $30,000 to fix it up. It's worth $100,000 now. You then go get a loan for 75% of that, which is $75,000. So I only actually have $5,000 left in that deal, which is, hey, you've done really well. Instead of, having to put $25,000 down to buy that $100,000 house, you only have that $5,000. ROI, fantastic. You're crushing it. You're doing great, but you've invested a lot of time to make that happen. You've had to work with a contractor. You've had to take on the risk of that project. The millions of things that could have gone wrong, you have taken on. And so the ROTI is pretty low, but the ROI is high.
I've never heard of the ROTI.
I made that one up.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm going to put it on my cash flow spreadsheet because I think that is like something I wish some of the investors I work with would look at a little bit more. Especially for the out-of-state guys, it's like you're going to be spending a lot of time doing this rehab, and it seems like you're not somebody that wants to spend a lot of time doing this. Should we look at something more turnkey? Let's look at this ROTI. I might have to put that on there.
Yeah, well, and it's a continuum. Different types of projects have different types of returns there.
Yeah. So I think anybody that invests in real estate has heard of and potentially followed the 1% rule. Why does the 1% rule not matter anymore?
So 1% rule is defined as the rent to value equaling 1%. And so what that means is, looking at the rent that you receive on a monthly basis, divide that by the purchase price of the home. So in that turnkey example that I was giving you, I bought that house for $75,000. That's my denominator. And my numerator was the $750 a month. And it might be slightly different than that, but fundamentally that's about where it was. And so it's $750 divided by $75,000 equals 1%. What a lot of people did for a long time is they just looked at the 1% rule as, oh, it's a good deal if it's a 1% deal. Not taking a lot of factors into account. 1% only talks about cash flow. It only takes into account how much income you have. And then it doesn't necessarily take into account what expenses you're going to have. So I think it's a wildly simplified way of looking at things. And that ratio might give you an idea of whether you want to dig deeper. But one, appreciation has happened over the last several years that has outpaced rent increases. So the 1% deals just don't exist out there, at least not for long-term rentals. I still think you could do better than that on the short-term side. But again, there's a lot more management. Now, the other side of things that I think a lot of people don't take into account is there are so many expenses on a house that you don't necessarily think about. There is repairs, which whether or not you are actually paying for repairs on a daily basis or on a monthly basis, you need to be accounting for them because they will come 100%. And it's never going to be just like, hey, 7% of the 750. It's going to be, hey, it's a water heater that went out. All right, that's an $800. That's 1 month's rent. There's a variety of different things. So you need to be accounting for that, even if you're not paying for it that particular month. CapEx, hey, that house is slowly breaking down. And so you need to be prepared to make the major renovations that are going to be required. Such as main lines, like we were talking about earlier, furnaces, the roof, stuff like that. There's vacancy, which, hey, you've been in the property management world. You're familiar with this. Even if it's not vacant, you need to be accounting for that month and a half. That place is sitting vacant whenever that person leaves. There's the lease up fee. There's the property management fee. There's taxes. There's a million things. And so people just see 1% and they're like, oh my God, it's got to be a great deal. When the truth of the matter is, there's so many other factors. A house that's just been recently renovated that has all of the capital expenditure items recently repaired, it's going to be a whole lot cheaper to operate on a percentage basis than a house that's a 1% deal that's a slumlord property down in the heart of Indianapolis. It's a it's a tough dichotomy to hold that. Like, yes, I do look at rent to value ratios, but if I see a 1% deal, I'm like, oh, that's got to be a trash.
That's exactly what I was gonna go to.
Yeah.
If I see 1% now, I'm kind of scared. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, what's wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. I still think like 0.8% is feasible in a lot of good areas. Beach Grove, I know I'm still seeing that a decent amount. I think honestly, you were talking a little bit about Broad Ripple. It might not be quite 0.8, but I think you can get somewhere in that general vicinity. And I think you can still do really well. But you need to make sure that one, the rents are a little bit higher. You want a little bit higher quality tenant. Let me tell you, you don't want it. Vacancy isn't just whether or not somebody's living in that house, like I was talking about earlier. It's actually whether or not they're paying to live in that house. It's financial vacancy that you actually care about.
Yeah.
And so a little bit higher end tenant is gonna be helpful from that perspective and lower that vacancy expense, which again lowers your requirement from a return perspective. The other reason why the 1% rule I think is just kind of irrelevant is it doesn't take into account what you were talking about earlier, which is appreciation, forced or non-forced appreciation. Houses change in value over time. Crappy areas don't tend to appreciate nearly as well as nicer areas. Broad Ripple, South Broad Ripple, Bates Hendricks, like those are all nicer areas which have seen outsized appreciation versus the anything in 46218. Let's just be honest about it. Like that area it's not appreciating the way that that a lot of people would want, but that's where a lot of the 1% deals have been over the years.
Those are all good notes, man. Like, I'm trying to think of like the cash flow model, and like when I'm usually filling these out right now for investors, I'm not seeing positive cash flow in most instances. Have you invested in a property that produced negative cash flow for the first few years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Now I approach it a little differently. So it's very easy to make something be cash flow positive. It's actually not hard at all.
Put more money down.
That's the easy button. So yes, I regularly have purchased in negative cash flow deals, but my thought process in those scenarios was I was going to lower the amount that I had invested in that deal. So I would go in there, I would buy, and again, some very real examples. I've got a property down in Bates Hendricks that if I was to longer term rent it, it would definitely be negative in this scenario. But I bought it for 140. I sunk about 120 into it, so I was all into it for 260, 250 to 260. It appraised for 350. So I went and got an 80% loan. Yeah, I crushed it. My ROTI was terrible. My ROI was great because I just bird that property. I stripped it of equity, and so I essentially had this property for no money out of pocket in that scenario, which is freaking great. Like how can you even plan that? Like that worked out better than I ever could have hoped. Now I could have purchased that home for $350,000. I could have put $70,000 as a down payment in that scenario and done it that way. Or I did it the way I did it, got it for free essentially. And if I take negative $200 of cash flow for the next 3 or 4 years, I'm talking about a couple of $1,000, instead of the $70,000 I would have put as a down payment. Who comes out ahead in that scenario? You do. Yeah, absolutely. Now I do like to find alternative ways of winning in that scenario. So instead of just sitting it there as a long-term rental, I did put it on short-term, and we're averaging like $5,000 a month right now. Now, again, a lot more work that goes into it. $5,000 of long-term versus $5,000 of short-term are two very different things.
Yeah.
And the return model is very different, and the expense model is very different. But yeah, I've totally bought negative cash flow deals when I'm in a situation like that.
It's good to hear. I always try to phrase it towards investors, and sometimes it's just maybe not the right time for them to invest if they're afraid of negative cash flow or not willing to put more money down in order to have it positively cash flow.
Yeah.
It's good nuts. All right. I know most of your time has kind of been eaten up by off-leash construction lately, but off-leash investment still exists. What is getting you out of your chair to go look at a property right now to purchase?
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit of a stickler on my numbers, which means that we're walking a whole lot fewer properties than we were a while ago. The market feels really competitive right now. For us, we want to see significant return on mostly these deals. And so we approach every deal with a multiple exit strategy type of situation. Most of the time we're walking in with the idea that flipping is our first. We want to flip so that we can make a little bit of capital right then. And so in that situation, we want to see at least 50% return on our scope of work.
Okay.
So, hey, if it's a $50,000 scope of work, we want to see at least $25,000 worth of yield there, net of agent fees on the back end, just to make sure it's worth our time and worth the risk associated with it. Because it's hard. It's hard to go out there and do these things and manage them. And so we want to make sure that our OTI is as high as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we need to see at least 50% return based on the photos that we see on the front end. I've got 2 deal finders who do that for us on a regular basis. All they're doing is analyzing deals. And so we probably only walk 2 or 3 a week, where before we were walking like 7, 8. And so it's a little bit less. Recently just purchased one that did not follow my model, but had ancillary benefits because my in-laws and my parents come to town a lot. And despite us having a fairly sizable house, it's not big enough for that much family.
For the whole crew.
Yeah, and so it's 15 minutes door to door from our door, and so it's going to be another Airbnb that we picked up. But yeah, we're not doing a lot from a flipping perspective right now. The other thing that we're doing a little bit is we are doing some direct to seller marketing. I shouldn't say that to an agent here, but and then we're wholetailing it on the back end, which has been a really cool model where essentially we go solve somebody's problem to give them the money fast. That tends to be their biggest issue, is they don't have time to make repairs. They don't have the money to make repairs. And so we're purchasing it, doing light fix ups, and then putting it immediately on the market, and have seen some success there.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, I know you've got a busy day ahead of you still. Anything else you'd like to chat on before we get out of here?
I mean, those are kind of the big things. I still think there's a huge opportunity out there for people who are looking to do value add, looking to find those extra bathrooms, find that extra square footage. The market's a little hot, but like that's where you finding that niche, that you going down and seeing that, hey, this is really big for a 3-1. I think I can find that second bathroom is your opportunity to really know exactly what you're looking for and identify it pretty effectively, and work with Julius here to make sure that you've got the right filters and everything set up so that you're ready to go.
Yeah, one strategy I've been trying to use, it's hard. It involves me going to look at a lot of properties, but turning larger 2-bedroom homes into 3-bedroom homes.
Yeah.
They have to not be tiny bedrooms. That
Yeah.
does not work. Probably makes your value less than it would be as a 2-bedroom. But that's something I've been super interested in, and I haven't got one under contract yet, but I'm going to look at them pretty frequently. It's just, you get there and you have these expectations based off of the photos, like there's space behind that wall, and you get there and now the chimney's behind that wall, and I can't do anything about that. But I think that's another great thing to look into as well, on the value add side of things.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
There was also a point last year, I don't know if this trend is still there, but turning 3-bedroom homes into 2-bedrooms homes with larger bedrooms. I don't know if that's still a trend. I haven't looked at the numbers for it, but I know last year there were a lot of people doing that for investments because people were moving home or working from home and wanted more space so it didn't feel so cramped, and maybe they didn't have kids like they were expecting to. So that's just another thing to kind of ponder on.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. I like that.
Yeah. Before you get out of here, I know I asked you last time, but what are 3 places in or around Indianapolis that you enjoy visiting? Restaurants, bars, whatever.
Yeah, I've got a couple of good examples here, just simply because my wife and I, not this last week, but the week before, decided to play hooky one Friday and just go out on a really fun date.
Awesome.
And so we hit up a couple of really fun spots. First and foremost, the Eagle down on Mass Ave, freaking amazing chicken. Like you can't get better fried chicken than that.
You get a whole, or not a whole, you get half a fried chicken.
Oh no, we got
You get a whole one too? Okay.
Oh yeah, we got a whole fried chicken.
It's bang for your buck too.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one spot. Also, Root and Bone, which is right there in the Broad Ripple area, which I know you're a fan of, has amazing fried chicken too. We ended up doing something called Go Ape. It's like a zip line course. It's super
Yeah.
fun. I think anybody who's visiting that wants to get a little adventurous can have a great time there. Let me tell you, that would not exist in California. Way too much liability. And then finally, the last one. It's actually just a couple of blocks away from here, but we finished the evening over at 3 Up, which is on Main Street here in Carmel. It's a rooftop bar that is just
cool.
It's so fun, man. It's so cool. So yeah, those are some of the newer spots that I'm definitely a fan of.
Might have to check some of those out. I've been to the Eagle and I love the Eagle, so don't need to go there again. But I started doing restaurant reviews, so I'm taking consideration.
I like it.
Yeah, it's cool. This week's Carmel, or this month, I'm doing a different like city or location every month.
3 Up, give it a shot. It's
I will.
Great rooftop bar.
Maybe we'll do. Me and my girlfriend need to play hooky at one point this week, so I can go do my review. I had sauce on the side last week. Calzones. I had no clue what it was. I just looked up restaurants in Carmel, and that one popped up. Other places that I've enjoyed around here, BB Bop. I'm really, really glad that my office is right next to BB Bop. Have you had it?
No.
I would describe it as Asian Chipotle. Like you get a bowl, they have sweet potato noodles, which is kind of unique.
Yeah.
And they're great, and they have great toppings. You put potatoes in it. That's great. Everybody loves some nice house potatoes.
Yeah.
And then last spot, I don't know another Carmel spot. Dang it. I guess I'll have to go.
All right, hold on. I'll then give you one more then for Carmel. If you're up in this area and you're looking for an amazing steakhouse with amazing drinks, Anthony's, which is again right there on Main Street. It's downstairs of 3 Up. You can't beat it.
Okay, I like a nice downstairs vibe too.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, man. It's been a pleasure having you on here again, and thanks for letting us utilize the space. I'll put together a little commercial for you to have on these episodes.
Stoked for it, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.